Level 989.
Welcome to a 989 on Health Extra. These quick supplements should help ease any withdrawal symptoms you may experience while waiting for our next full episode. So, Mike, what's on today's agenda?
We've received another great topic request from a listener. This week's question is, my baby sister was just born a few days ago, and she has a lazy eye. The left eyelid is completely closed. What's going on here? All right, lazy eye. One of the technical terms sometimes used for this condition is amblyopia. And you know it's about vision because of the opia on the end. The ambly part at the beginning makes it sound as if you can't walk well. Doctor, my boy, he can sashay just fine. He can swagger, but doctor, he can't amble. No, it has nothing to do with walking. The ambly part is Greek, means blunt, dull, faint, or dim. So it's more about the amount of light that's entering the eye, but the term amblyopia doesn't fit the description our listener sent in, a drooping eyelid. Sure, the eye isn't getting enough light due to the eyelid, but let's not assume a disorder in the eye itself until we know more. Another term associated with lazy eye is strabismus, which, broken up, means squinting condition. And that's misleading too, since it's generally used for folks with eyes that cross. Now, I said we shouldn't assume there was a problem with the eye, but a closed lid will result in eye problems pretty quickly. First with the muscles that control the eye, and get this, there are 6 major eye muscles. And if these don't get their proper exercise, especially in a newborn, the muscles get, or stay, weak. And the weaker eye muscles will cause the weak eye to drift or cross. Now, there's nothing wrong with the eye itself, but the muscles that control it get weak. And it's easier to say weak eye than the muscles controlling the eye are weak. And there's nothing wrong with these muscles, but if the lid is closed, the muscles that move the eye aren't doing any work. Imagine the eye as a giant telescope, and the eye muscles are the motors and gears that move the telescope into position. If the motors are broken, the telescope is fine, but it can't be moved into position to look at the planet Jupiter. But we still have not accurately described the medical term for a closed eyelid. That term is ptosis, which sounds a lot like it begins with the letter T, but it actually starts with the letter P, and is another Greek term, this time for falling, which is a term that doesn't specifically reference the eyelid, but is typically used that way. Now, a drooping eyelid can be the sign of serious conditions, cancer, brain tumor, stroke, or neuromuscular disorders, but these are typically seen in adults. Congenital ptosis, that is, a droopy eyelid you're born with, is typically a problem with the muscle that raises the eyelid, rather than a more systemic problem. Deeper problems do occur, but they're more rare. One study showed that 1 baby in 842 babies are born with congenital ptosis. As it happens, I was born with ptosis. My right eyelid was closed when I was born. And in 70% of known cases, congenital ptosis affects only one eye, seems to occur in equal amounts in males and females, and can happen within the first year of life, not necessarily right at birth. So what causes ptosis? Well, this could turn into a 3-hour marathon episode if I tried to break it all down in detail. So I'm going to keep it basic. It can be caused by genetic problems, nerve problems, muscle problems, tumors, inflammation, and birth trauma. Just being born is an ordeal and can be hard on the tiny human. Often the reason given for a newborn's ptosis is called idiopathic, which means the reason is unknown. A lot of testing needs to take place to rule out more severe conditions, to make sure the eye itself is healthy, that tears are being produced to properly lubricate the eye, but in the end, often the reason can never be known. So the eye muscles get weak, and the eye will not be held in the correct position. Focusing the eye uses muscles. So as the muscles get weak, it's harder and eventually impossible to focus using the weak eye. Later in life, it's simply too late. The brain has begun to deprioritize signals from the weak eye. And even with practice, it'll never have the vision of the strong eye. Now, it's possible if you've completely lost vision in your good eye, used only your weak eye for months on end, would your brain eventually recalibrate? It depends on the person, their age, and a bunch of other factors. So the answer is maybe, it depends, probably not. When you think about people who've lost an arm and spend years in phantom limb pain because the brain thinks the arm is still there, you realize it can be very hard to retrain the brain, though it can be tricked occasionally. There are even attachments for glasses called a Ptosis crutch, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a little loop or arch of metal or plastic that's actually pushing into your skin, helping to raise your eyelid. I can see a ton of problems with this, a dry eye being only one of them. I could see using a crutch briefly, especially if I'm advanced in age and need to read something for a very short time. But I personally can't imagine wearing an eyelid crutch for hours on end. Treatment for ptosis varies somewhat depending on the cause, but comes down, typically, eventually, to surgery for the skin, tissue, and/or muscle that holds up the eyelid, which might actually involve muscle and tissue all the way up into your forehead. But if you're a tiny little newborn, they might make you wait a bit for corrective surgery. To keep the eye and its muscles healthy and toned, you'll want to tape open the eyelid for several hours each day. I'm trying to imagine doing this to a newborn or a little critter. You'd also have to keep their eye moist during this time. Depending on exactly what the cause of that particular infant's ptosis is, the doctors can operate at any age depending on the severity of the problem. But they might wait as late as until the child is 3 to 4 years old to perform the operation. My own operation took place when I was 9 months old, and this was in 1972. So, if I was born today, how would my treatment differ? Would they wait until I was 4 years old? Would my eye have been taped open for hours every day? Having two functional eyes is important. To return to the telescope analogy, there are times when 2 or more telescopes are used to image the same celestial object at the same time. You get a lot more data that way. That's why we have 2 eyes, which allows us to have depth perception. I myself have a weak eye. It's the eye that was closed for 9 months, and the treatment after surgery is basically to work the weaker eye and let it get stronger. Part of that is putting a patch on the good eye for several hours per day. I've forgotten most of my childhood, but I can still recall the horrible sticky patch over my good eye that I was supposed to wear at school every day until lunch, I think. How well do you think a little kid in kindergarten is going to behave with a yucky, sticky patch on his face? Basically a piece of duct tape on your face, especially something the kid can easily remove and then just claim, oops, it fell off. I can't really recall for sure, but I don't think the sticky eye patch period lasted very long. A cool pirate eye patch on an elastic string might have been an easier sell. Pirates really weren't as in as they are now. But I would have lost or broken it each day. So there would have had to have been a big bag of these patches, a fresh one for every day. I also vaguely recall a pair of glasses I was supposed to wear with one eye covered over, but I'm pretty sure I lost or broke them. Adults get the hint pretty quickly when a kid's not going to cooperate with something that's so difficult to enforce. What would I do if I had kids, one had a lazy eye, and I would know that my offspring would be stubborn, careless, and distracted? They wouldn't wear their eye patch no matter how cool I managed to make it. Well, magical eye drops, my friends. These eye drops are a real thing. They contain atropine, which will basically paralyze the good eye for hours on end, forcing the kid to use the bad eye. This would have worked on me or my unruly, imaginary children. Once the eye drops have paralyzed your eye, the kid can't do anything about it. They're going to be forced to exercise their bad eye until the eye drops finally wear off. Research shows that the eye drops work as well as a patch, if the patch is properly worn. So if you have a good, obedient child who's actually going to wear a patch, there's no need to dose them with some weird paralytic drug. Depending on the child, there might be ways to entice them. You make it a game or a story. Perhaps there's a new hard plastic eye patch every day. Hey, Thor wears an eye patch, right? Thor's cool. Parents could make a whole crafting opportunity out of it. The eye patches could have cool stickers or be painted by the kid with different characters or colors, and the patches could then be put into some kind of eye patch scrapbook, which would help them be careful and not lose them. Really depends on the kid. I was always a lot more of a Loki than a Thor. So how is my vision? I do about 95% of my seeing with one eye, the left. The right eye is just a blur. Everything with the right eye just feels like extended peripheral vision. if that makes any sense. I see pretty well for a dude who's almost 50. I can drive a car, perform minute tasks like threading a needle. I can do anything and everything I ever try to do. Well, almost everything. I was not able to pass the entrance physical into the Air Force because I failed the depth perception test. It's not as if I was hoping to fly a jet. I would have been happy to fly a desk, but no military service for me. So what are the long-term impacts of congenital ptosis? Well, the end results of the surgeries to correct the drooping eyelid fall into a few categories. The surgeon might have shortened the tissue and or muscle a bit too much, meaning the patient would no longer have a drooping lid, but now has to contend with a lid that cannot close all the way, which can cause eye dryness and other issues. If the surgeon didn't take quite enough tissue or muscle, the lid will be improved but still droop. Of these two possibilities, I'd say not taking enough is the better way to go, especially for an infant. The eye needs light and exercise as soon as possible. Once the kid is full-grown-ish, say 16, they can have their next surgery. In the end, it can take multiple surgeries to achieve a perfect balance between function, appearance, and symmetry, so the eyes get enough light and exercise, and the brow line and the eye line match and agree. For me, I just have a weird head. I've always had a bit of a smushed-looking right side of my face, so my right brow and eye do not agree with the left side. My right eye is still somewhat droopy, but am I willing to go through a series of plastic surgeries to correct this? I am not. Even if I were perfectly symmetrical, I'd still look like, the love child of Steve Buscemi and Paul Giamatti. No offense meant to either of those fine gentlemen, but it would not turn me into a fashion model. As always, there are lots of useful links in the show notes. Be sure to check these out for more details. Thanks again to our great listeners for sending in suggestions. If you'd like to send in your own topic for consideration, head on over to level989.com/contact and make it so.
That's all for now. You can find links to read more about today's topics at level989.com. Why not take a moment to rate or review us in iTunes, or give us a mention on social media? We can't help everyone if they don't know we exist. Don't rely on us as an alternative to medical advice from a professional healthcare provider. For the full disclaimer, please see our website. Thanks for listening, and now, go health yourself.